let's make a start. Big welcome to everybody, and thank you for joining us for this webinar for the role of Philanthropy Officer or Philanthropy Manager for the DACH region at GFI Europe. I'm very pleased that you can join us today. I'm going to put, before I start, just a quick link in the chat. So we are not able to monitor the Zoom chat for questions. So there's a link there to put them through a form. We can monitor that form and just make sure that we're capturing the questions there as well. So please do use that link if you have any questions. Okay, we'll just make a quick start. We'll introduce ourselves. So my name is Alex Mayers, and I'm the Managing Director at GFI Europe. So I am based in the southwest of the UK. But our team is spread all across Europe. We're working in about 6 or 7 countries now where we have team members, and that is growing all the time, which is very exciting. So we are really excited to have this role joining our team, which we'll tell you about in a few minutes. But I'll hand over to Natasha to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining today, and thanks for your interest in this role. I'm Natasha Sweet. I'm a Senior Philanthropy Manager in GFI Europe's development team. I joined GFI 2 years ago now, and I am also based in the UK. I'm in the Midlands of the UK, so a couple of hours outside of London.
Super, thank you. Okay, so I'll just introduce GFI quickly to you as well. So we are an international non-profit, and we're laser focused on basically changing the way that meat is produced. So when people are in the supermarkets and they're choosing their foods, they're not normally choosing their food according to sustainability targets or ingredients labels and things like that. Normally, the label that they're looking at is the price label. Second thing they want to know is it tasty? So we know the harms that are caused by industrial animal agriculture and where meat is produced, the way that meat is produced. So our theory of change is basically trying to find better ways to produce that meat in the first place and making sure that it is price and taste competitive. So when we're talking about alternative ways of producing meats, that's things like using plants, so plant-based burgers, plant-based chicken, things like that. Maybe cultivating the meat outside the animal instead of inside an animal's body. Or using fermentation technologies. So that might be biomass fermentation, like mycoprotein. It could be precision fermentation, where yeast are producing different proteins or things like that, which can then be used in the food production. So we are very passionate about this for lots of reasons, but some of the cause areas are very much animal welfare because of the benefits that this will have to animals no longer needing to be intensively farmed. Also climate goals. So if we can produce meat in better ways, we can solve up to 1/3 of climate emissions across the world. And we believe this is a really scalable solution. So this is something that could work in all corners of the world. It can look at sustainability in terms of like how antimicrobial resistance, making sure that antibiotic use is mitigated, also food security, food sovereignty for different countries as well. So there's a number of angles for what we're doing, and we're extremely passionate and laser focused on basically accelerating alternative proteins to market as soon as we can. So as I said earlier, we're very excited for this role to be joining our team. This is the first philanthropy-focused role which will be based in Germany, although Natasha's been doing a lot of work with donors in Germany and also with third-party fundraisers based in Germany as well, which we'll tell you a little bit about today. So let's crack on with some of the questions, Natasha. There's some questions about the role itself. So maybe could you start by introducing the role? You're the line manager for this role, so maybe introduce the role a little bit. Is it a new role? Like how does it function like together with the team?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So just to give you like an overview, I guess. So we're recruiting for a philanthropy officer or manager for the DACH region. And it might just help to give you a picture of the development team as it is now and then how this role fits into that. So right now we're a team of 5. That includes 3 frontline fundraising roles, one of whom is our head of the development team for GFI Europe. And then in addition to these 3, we also have a prospect research manager and a development coordinator. But we're recruiting for 3 new roles, including this one. So hopefully that means that by the end of the year, we'll be a team of 8. And we're really excited about this role in particular because it's giving us that increased frontline fundraising ability and capacity in the team. And that need for that has really emerged from, as you've just touched on, Alex, our existing donor portfolio. So we do have a number of supporters in Germany in particular, also in Austria and Switzerland, and see there being really fantastic potential to grow our donor community in the DACH region. So yes, it's a new role. We do have strategies in place as a team for our fundraising in this region, but at the same time, there is also a real opportunity here to make the role your own for the successful candidate, and to play a really central role in how our team grows and develops in this region in the coming years. And yeah, the need for this role has come very much from GFI Europe's work, from our programmatic teams growing their work and impact, and then from our fundraising goals and team growing in parallel with that.
Nice, thank you. What's the difference between the officer and the manager level roles for this? So obviously we're advertising two different levels. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So it is a bit of an unusual situation recruiting for either or. The main kind of difference is that at the manager level, we are looking for that person to really take hold of our strategy for the region, and develop a DACH specific strategy. And also potentially to work with supporters such as donor advisors, and other supporters in the region. So there's a couple of kind of key differences there. The main one really being that having that strategic, more strategic ownership. That's not to say there isn't any ownership at the officer level, because there will be too. Yeah, but I think that's the key difference. And the way we'll assess that in the application process is, yeah, through like every stage of the process, looking at what the candidates are bringing to those different like areas of the work, and getting to know the candidates. And I think like once we've gone through that process, through our recruitment process, we will have a fairly good sense of like where the candidates are sitting in terms of the officer or manager level. But ultimately, there's room for either in our team, and we can do a lot with either in our team. So that's why we're recruiting for either.
Super, thank you. Okay, I kind of have a nice question. What's like a day in the life of this role likely to look like? So, like, how would you describe the kind of routine workflows that this person will be doing and contributing to the team?
Yeah, sure. So the number one thing is that you'll be working with your own portfolio of donors. Um, Broadly speaking, that's a mixture of major donors and some foundations. Um, Probably the largest share will be in Germany, but as we've said, also Austria, also Switzerland. Um, and you'll be working through your portfolio, reaching out to donors, arranging meetings, having meetings, speaking to your colleagues in the GFI Europe team about maybe work they've done that you can communicate to donors. Um, yeah, that obviously is the donor side. I guess also like liaising with the GFI Europe dev team. We meet fairly regularly. Our global dev team as well. So you'll get to know our colleagues on the global development team in the US and elsewhere. Or you might be on retreat. So GFI Europe goes on retreat. I think it's going to be once a year from 2025. So you may be there doing some team bonding activities with our whole GFI Europe team.
Nice. Yeah, just to let everybody know, our upcoming retreats is November, so only a couple of months away. So whether someone would be able to join that one, I'm not quite sure if there'd be time, but that one is going to be in sunny Porto, or at least I'm hoping it's going to be sunny, but we'll see what we get. Super. Okay. You mentioned about the global dev team. How does the dev team work together in Europe, but also like with the global at the global level?
Yeah, sure. So it is a really, really cool thing about working in fundraising at GFI actually, because GFI's global dev team is really, I think, like the gold standard in terms of fundraising. and has driven GFI's essentially astonishing growth from when it was founded in 2016 till now. And so the GFI Europe dev team, we're kind of like our own mini team here in Europe, but we are very integrated with the global team. That team, I actually don't know how many people, maybe there's around 20. And it's made up again of frontline fundraisers and operations support and leadership roles. And we work very closely with them in terms of like having surgeries to brainstorm strategies for donors and prospects, working together on projects, events, kind of leadership representation to donors, stewardship materials. So there's a lot of integration, but recognizing as well that there is also a need for us to speak specifically to our European context, and that is a kind of a growing theme for our team.
It's such a cool thing. I think particularly with this role, yes, the European context and also a DACH specific context as well, which is just really awesome. So
True.
in this role, I think you'd be very much delivering messages to a DACH audience, which is just amazing. And you'd be by yourself doing that in the DACH region, but you'd also have this amazing Europe-wide and also global network of people who'd all be feeding in and all be supporting and all be very available to you to make sure that that was as good as you could possibly make it. So it's like the perfect blend of lots of autonomy and lots of kind of ownership of your own stuff, with also a heap of support and a heap of other people around the world who've walked a similar path and who can share lots of resources and lots of materials. So yeah, in my experience, I've worked with a few different organizations in the past where you have this kind of network of affiliates or branches or things like that around the place. And I've never seen it work as well as it does at GFI. It's just extraordinary how well the balance is there for support and also autonomy. It's just great. It's really quite special. Super. Okay. What kind of support or training or onboarding would the successful candidate get in this role?
Yeah, so we have a really lovely onboarding process at GFI that's really designed to let you become immersed in alternative proteins and not just be hurled straight into your day-to-day job. So it does give you the opportunity to become like familiar with the team and familiar with our topic and familiar with those cause areas that Alex has mentioned earlier as well, in terms of how they intersect with alternative proteins. So the climate impact or the nature preservation impact, animal suffering impact, and several others anyway. So yeah, that's a kind of onboarding process. And in terms of training and ongoing support, we do have like specific training opportunities, and there's budget for each member of the team to undertake training. That's essentially personal to them in terms of what their training needs look like. But we do have that professional development budget there. And then in terms of support, this is, yeah, really extensive. So from your line manager, from the head of development, from like other development colleagues, yeah, here in Europe and in the US and elsewhere. And yeah, we just have no shortage of support, basically, whether that's like kind of trying to figure out a strategy for one of your prospects, or perhaps it's talking to like our programmatic team about a foundation that's exploring alternative proteins. Yeah, I feel like the support is kind of baked in, basically.
Nice. It's a lovely way to phrase it. Super. Is there someone already working as a fundraiser for the Austrian market?
So no, not specifically, although we have done some fundraising work in Austria. So we've never had somebody focused on Austria solely, or indeed on the DACH region solely until now, once this role is recruited. But we do have some prospects and donors in Austria. So yeah, there's a starting point there for somebody. We do envisage possibly the larger portion of the portfolio will be in Germany. But yeah, 100% there are opportunities in Austria, and we've dipped our toe in so far.
Yes. It wasn't that long ago. When were we in Vienna, Natasha? Natasha
Yeah,
and I traveled to Vienna was it a couple of months back? End of last year?
yeah, I think it was at the very end of April because it was the final day of our C1 cycle. So yeah, 30th of April, I think we were in Vienna.
Lovely. That was meeting some potential donors, but also just looking at how we could widen our circle and just explore more potential opportunities in Austria as well. So it's something very much on our radar. But yeah, having the capacity through this role is going to be extremely exciting for us. Super. Okay, another couple of questions along this line. Are there colleagues supporting in communications and PR, especially for the German speaking market?
Yes, there are, which is good news. Yes. We have several other members of our team who are based in Germany, in our policy team, in our SciTech team, and in our operations team. And we have, in terms of like language, we have a German, completely translated German website. Um, Lots of materials already translated into German. And for this role, we will also have more budget to do translation for more dev related, development related materials. So yeah, there's plenty of support there. And in terms of driving the kind of maybe messaging side of things more for DACH as well, I think that's something that we would expect to happen. And like it also aligns really well with us building our European case for support, that we're developing those like national level or DACH region messages as well.
Nice. Really good question that someone's posed. How much, basically, with what amount does someone become a major donor at GFI?
Yeah, sure. So we don't have a set amount at the moment anyway. Maybe we will do in future. And I know I've certainly worked in other organizations where there has been like these established bandings in place. I think it speaks to like where we're at in our team's evolution, which i.e. we're still quite early in our team's evolution, and also just where we're at in our team's growth. So yeah, we haven't had that up until now. But like just to give you a really rough idea of the sort of levels we're talking about, I think most of the prospects and donors in this portfolio we'd be aiming for gifts of 5 or 6 figures. But there could be some exceptions, and some donors may be in the kind of 4-figure area, for various different reasons as well.
Nice. That links quite nicely to the next question about what the goals for the dev team are for 2024. Like, do you have like numerical targets to reach?
Yes, we do have team like ambitious team goals, which contribute to GFI's overall global team fundraising targets as well. We don't set an individual target on the individual fundraisers. Rather, at the moment, we're working together as a team to raise the funds. Um, and yeah, as I said, that growing target is partly driven out of the growth of our GFI Europe team, and partly in acknowledgement of the huge kind of untapped potential for our fundraising in Europe at the moment, in these like relatively early days for our fundraising growth. I feel like there was something else I was going to say, and it's gone from my mind temporarily. Oh yes, no, goals for the team. Yeah, so I think we sort of touched on it already. The other kind of really big goal for us is exploring this European case for support. I think that's going to be a big achievement for us in 2025, which will really lean into the European context and individual countries in Europe, and their kind of cultural nuances, and really framing GFI's achievements and the potential of alternative proteins themselves, in terms of climate impact, and other areas of impact. But climate is really like a very major focus for a lot of philanthropists in Europe now. So yeah, I think those are our key goals. I feel like you may wish to add there, Alex.
No, that sounds awesome. I think that the kind of the European angles on the case for support like that, that's such a wonderful opportunity for this person to really help to lean in on that and make sure that it's really relevant for the German speaking audiences in Europe. So yeah, really exciting. Cool. What do you think would be the biggest challenge or challenges for this role? Obviously, we've spoken about some opportunities, but yeah, any particular challenges? Like, what would be the tough bits for this role?
So there's prioritization is going to be potentially a challenge. I think we've sort of alluded to the fact already that right now we have more leads than what our team can follow up, which is always good when you're recruiting new staff to the team. And I would say, with kind of the additional focus of philanthropists on climate and on food and agriculture kind of emerging as a real area of focus. And given the fact that we haven't had a fundraiser focused solely on the DACH region as yet, there is kind of an abundance of opportunities and different types of opportunities within that overall picture as well. So being able to prioritize is going to be a challenge. I don't think this role will face that challenge on their own. I think, there'll be a lot of support for like figuring out which opportunities to go after and in what order and so on. But yeah, it is definitely a challenge, and it's one that we all face at the moment.
Superb. Relating to that, is there already a portfolio in place, or is this something that this person can work on as well?
So yes, both. So yes, there is a portfolio, and at the moment that's sitting with other members of the team, like myself and also our head of development, in some cases. And we'd expect that some of those existing donors and prospects would move into this new portfolio for the DACH region. But we're also recruiting for these other two roles that I mentioned. And it's likely that some of those some of those donors rather, will be going to some of those other portfolios. So there's a lot to be looked at, and it will depend on who fills each role as well, because we'll naturally want to speak to each individual's strengths and needs and goals for personal development in the role as well. So yeah, that will all be figured out. And then I think there will also be plenty of scope for growing that portfolio, and pulling in these new opportunities that are identified as that candidate progresses in the role.
Nice. Yeah, I think in terms of like growth and stretch development, like we can't really see what that path is going to look like, but basically we're very, very open to whatever is available, and whatever opportunities come across. So yeah, the sky is the limit, really, I think, for them. Super. Okay, let's look a little bit more about who we're looking for specifically. So kind of the individual, the kind of the I don't want to say perfect person for the role, because that makes it sound like it makes it sound very exclusive. But for someone to be successful in this role, what attributes would they really need to have to be successful?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing that comes to my mind for this is relationship building. So, having a love and enjoyment of going about building relationships with our donors, and with our prospects, and with those people who can help us to connect with those audiences. As well as relationships within the team. So I think we've sort of touched on this a little bit, that that GFI Europe is very collaborative, and so, you know, enjoying working alongside your colleagues in not only in the development team but with other teams as well is going to be really important. So yeah, big focus on relationships, and passion for our mission, very important. We all want to see the food system become more sustainable. We're not all the same in terms of what that primary motivation looks like. So you could be someone who is very driven by preventing animal suffering on farms. You could be someone who's very driven by climate change and wanting to make a difference in nature. You could be someone who really wants to slow down the rise of antibiotic resistance. And that list is like, there's probably a few other things I could add there. So we're, yeah, like there's room for at the table basically for all of us. But yeah, the passion for transforming our food system for the better, that needs to be there. Good communication skills, being very well organized. And again, for the manager role here, as opposed to the officer role, being able to like bring a track record of strategic thinking is also very important.
Super, thank you. I've got a couple of language questions as well. So someone said, I'm not a native English speaker. Can I still apply for this role? How good does my English need to be? And someone else asked, would the main language of communication within the team be English, but external communications with donors and so on be in German? Can you speak a bit to that?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Yes, I don't think you need to be a native English speaker. You definitely don't need to be. You definitely need to have a very high level of proficiency in German because obviously the geographical remit of this role means that you will be able to communicate most effectively with supporters if you're able to speak to them in German. And so, yeah, that is very critical. We do use English as our team language. So yes, this does mean that you would be using both English and German day to day in your role, and probably much along the lines that this question has suggested. So yeah, there will be a lot of internal work in English and a lot of external work in German. I see that being true. I don't think your English. You do need to be proficient in English because obviously you do need to be able to communicate effectively. But I would say that your German being spot on is like that's absolutely critical. Whereas in English, like we obviously accept when people don't speak English as a first language, and that's completely fine as long as you can communicate effectively.
Super, thank you. Yeah, just for a bit more on that in terms of like the languages that people speak in our team. We're a team of about 35 people now. And I think last time I counted, we had something like 15 or 16, it might be even more now, passport nationalities, like different national passports that people hold in the team. It's a pretty diverse team with people who speak all sorts of languages, which is a wonderful, wonderful place to work. People bring different ideas, people bring different kind of cultural nuance and cultural kind of ways of describing the world, which is just such a great environment to be in. So yeah, absolutely, as Natasha said, speaking English as a first language isn't essential for this role. Speaking German in a way that you're able to work with donors, that really is essential. So yeah, that's the priority. Okay, I'm going to give you a bit of a break, Natasha, from lots of questions and cover some of the kind of terms and conditionsy questions, more kind of the operationally bits. So someone has asked, in the case of an Austrian employee, would there be the 13th and 14th salaries as part of the contract? Yeah, good question. We basically can leave that up to a negotiation with you. So for people who are unfamiliar with the Austrian context, it's very common to have a 13th month and a 14th month. We have had Austrian contracts in the past where we have offered that. It's basically the amounts that someone would take home in a year is just divided by 14 rather than divided by 12 months. So the amount that you'd get would be exactly the same by the end of the year. So we can be flexible on that point. So it's really whatever suits you best. So in Germany, we do a 12-month year if you were wanting to be contracted there. Someone has asked also, would the candidate need like a German contract or an Austrian contract, depending on where they would be based? Yes, absolutely. So we are registered in a number of countries in Europe as a foreign employer. And that's because our main entity is based in Belgium. So that entity is registered in Germany, it's registered in Austria as well. So we would offer an employment contract in whichever country, which would be valid under that country's employment law, but the contract would be with our Belgian entity. So that's worked very successfully for us in the past. So you'd be covered under the national terms and conditions, basically, but reporting into the Belgian entity. Okay, someone has asked if it would be possible to get to have flexible working to fit around other responsibilities, and would that be possible? Yeah, great question. We are as flexible as we possibly can be. So there's a number of angles to this. Firstly, we are a very trusting organization. We, as you will see from our hiring process, we don't really take chances with our hiring process. We will test out the skills in the job description in a bit of detail to make sure that the person that we're hiring is able to do the things which are in the job description. So our process is very skills driven. It's very much testing those skills to see if you could actually do the job. So when someone starts, we can be really confident that they are going to be able to do a great job with us. And we trust them to do that. So as much as we can within legal abilities in different countries, we'll aim not to have things like timesheets or like starting and stopping, like clocking in and clocking out from your job. You will have a 38-hour a week contract, regardless of what country you're in. And we'll expect you to deliver those 38 hours. But when you do that, it's up to you. You're an adult. So we will basically be interested in you making as much effort as you can to join certain meetings. So we have a team meeting on a Monday in Europe. That's one of the rare opportunities that we all do get together. And there might be some global development meetings as well with the global development team, where it's just important that you can try to make yourself available for those. Missing one or two of those things for like different things is absolutely fine, of course. But if you wanted to take a couple of hour yoga class in the middle of a day, great, enjoy it. That sounds great. If you needed to like pick up children from school at a certain time of the day, that's fine too. We can just bend your hours around those commitments. So one of the wonderful things about working remotely in this kind of way is that no one's going to be looking over your shoulder and micromanaging like what hours you're delivering. So yeah, if you want something flexible to fit around responsibilities, just let us know what they are and we'll do our absolute best to make sure that that will work for you. It is one of the big perks and advantages of working in this kind of way. Super. Is the role...
Can I add something
sorry,
in there, Alex? Sorry, before you carry on. Yeah, just to because I wanted to say that that does apply specifically in the GFI Europe dev team, so you wouldn't necessarily be the only person working flexibly if that were the case. And also because for this role we are able to accept part-time working as well. And I think we've said in the fine print that we would consider 26.5 hours a week or above. So that would need to be figured out with the successful candidate. But yeah, it is something that a couple of us already do and benefit from, including me, in our dev team. So, you know, that there is already plenty of support and understanding. Like, again, it's baked in. Yeah.
Thank you for raising that. I'd forgotten about the part-time bit. That's really helpful. Thank you. Super. Okay, so a bit about countries. So is this role restricted to people in certain countries? Ideally, this role is Germany-based or Austria-based, but I think I'm right saying that if you were based in one of the neighboring countries like Belgium or France, we could also look at employing you in one of those countries too. It will depend on whether we're registered to employ you on a local contract there. So ideally, though, this role is going to be based in Germany or Austria. So that's our main kind of defaults for this role. that really is linked partly because of geographically, that's where the donor pools are that we're interested in looking at. We're not registered in Switzerland, even though this is a DACH region role. So there might be some travel to places like Switzerland or to the other country if you're based in Germany or Austria, to the other one as well, just to meet donors in different places. Natasha, was there anything to add on location?
Um, no, I don't think so. I mean, only just to say that like that's where you need to be based the majority of the time, but like you don't have to be there 100% of the time. So like that's probably one of the really cool things about working for GFI as a completely remote org. That some colleagues have gone off and done like co-working stints for a few weeks somewhere, or gone home to visit family for a few weeks and worked from there. So yeah, there is that opportunity as well for our colleagues, which is really cool.
Really good. It's a really good bonus, I think. And thank you for raising that, Natasha. There was a question that someone had asked, is remote work from other EU countries where they're not contracted? Is that possible? And if so, is there a time limit in the number of days? So yeah, everything Natasha said is absolutely correct there. So we are very flexible with where someone is when they deliver the role. We have had people even working from outside the EU for short stints as well. Basically talk that through with your line manager, who's Natasha in this case, and just make sure that that's okay. There would be some limits. It would be partly about like your national like tax like authorities and the specifics on like how many days you'd be able to work from outside. So you would need to retain your tax residency in the country that you're hired in. So it would depend on some rules like that. But on the whole, those rules are fairly generous. So yeah, we can be pretty flexible with how things are delivered. So and again, I can give some wonderful examples, as Natasha has, of people who've taken advantage of that and gone co-working from somewhere else, worked from another country where it's just more comfortable, or like better weather or something like that for the winter season, and that's wonderful. So yeah, it's a lovely perk. Okay, what's the ideal start date? I'll have a first go at this, Natasha, but I think I'll come to you as well. So my understanding of the ideal start date is basically as soon as possible. So we would love someone to be starting whenever they're able to start. If it's sooner rather than later, that's great for us to get to know the donors, to get to know the team, and to work alongside us to really build those relationships and look for opportunities. So that said, we'll also obviously be very respectful of notice periods. If you have to give in your notice at your current employment, absolutely fine. We're not going to put pressure on people. We want people to be happy when they're joining us. And so, yeah, I think that's all for that. Have I missed anything, Natasha?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything else to add there. Yeah, I think you're spot on.
Real. All right, thank you. Okay, I'll just have a quick look at the other questions here. Okay, someone has asked, is it a freelance position or is it one to be hired as an employee? Our default is to hire people as an employee. We want people to feel like they're part of our team, and we want people to have the benefits as well that other people in the team will also get. So that would be our default. If somebody really needs to be a freelancer for some particular personal reasons, just let us know, and we can talk through whether that's possible or not. But that feels to me like it's not a deal breaker at all. But we just need to talk through how we can make that happen. Okay, what are the timelines for the role in terms of like next steps, some of those assessments and interviews and things like that? Are you able to answer that one, Natasha?
Yes, I can answer that. And I can also confirm that it's on the role description page on our website. If you go to GFI Europe careers and then click on the role, it is all there at the bottom of that page. So the deadline is the 29th of September, a minute before midnight Central European time that night. That's for your application to be in. And that's answering the 3 short work sample questions. Then we're looking at roughly the beginning of October for a timed assignment, which is a 2-hour assignment under timed conditions, as you might imagine. And then mid-October for the interviews, which will be on Zoom. Currently only expecting that we'll do 1 round of interviews, but it is possible that we might need to do a second round. And they will be arranged at a mutually agreed day and time.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, gonna move on to a couple of more general questions about GFI Europe. So what is the working culture like at GFI Europe? Do you want to maybe answer that one from your perspective, Natasha? And I can also give a bit from my side after.
Yeah, definitely. I would describe the working culture as very very deliberately designed from the outset to enable collaboration, and to make sure that everybody's voices are heard. We're constantly looking for like, spotting improvements that we can make, like giving each other constructive feedback. And yeah, in terms of the team itself, like a very friendly, welcoming, and warm environment. Um, I would say it's like, yeah, that's our culture, like without exception from my experience.
It's really nice to hear. Similar to what I was going to say too, which is also very positive. So, from my side, yeah, we have to be quite intentional about the way that we build culture in an organization that's remote. So, trying to bring people together if we can. So, finding opportunities like those retreats where people can come together and meet their colleagues in person. The development team got together in Manchester in the UK recently, for a couple of days of co-working and strategizing and just getting better acquainted with each other as well, with a couple of fairly recent starters as well. So yeah, being collaboration focused again is something that needs to be our default. So we need everybody to be happy to coordinate and collaborate with each other, and that again is one of the advantages, one of the real perks of an organization like GFI, where that happens at the local level. So in this role, you'd be collaborating and speaking all the time with your colleagues in the DACH region. Also, wider than that within the dev team, and also wider than that at the global level as well. So there's different layers of people who will all be very supportive and very much wanting to get to know you as a person, as well as kind of as a colleague. So yeah, it's hopefully a very warm, very inviting, and very safe place to be, and safe place to kind of be yourself as well. Cool. Okay. Another question. What is the gender ratio in your team? Yeah, good question. It is predominantly female. Our senior leadership team is, I think, 6 out of 7 are female. Within the development team, there's how's the balance? Is it
Three
three?
out of five are female currently.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's a similar ratio to the wider team as well. So yeah. On a related question, how does GFI recruitment process reflect its commitment to diversity and equity? Really lovely question, and I'm always really happy to see when people post this because it's something that I feel very passionate about. Yeah, we try our absolute hardest with our recruitment process to attract very diverse candidates from across Europe, who come from very different backgrounds. I know that that is one of the best ways to really strengthen our team and to really make sure that we are as robust as we can, that we challenge ourselves, that we do give each other feedback from different perspectives. And it's a very safe place to do that. So yeah, it's a very important thing, which I take personally very seriously, and the operations team do as well. So things they integrate includes the fact that we don't look at CVs in the early stages of the application process at all, if we possibly can help it. So I'm not sure whether this role we're asking for CVs in the early stages or not. We're not.
No.
Okay, good. So we won't even know anything about what school or university or anything else that you went to, because frankly, it doesn't matter to us. We want to know whether you have the skills to do this job. Only later do we look at CVs, and that's largely to just check for references at the very end stages of the process. So we'll do our best to filter out any personal information about the individuals applying. So the people assessing steps in the process, when they're assessing people's skills, they won't even see names. They'll see nothing about that person. So we can, as much as we possibly can, squeeze as much potential unintended bias out of the process by just making it as anonymous as we can. We also genuinely want to be diverse. We want to be as equal and as equitable as we can. So as an example of how we've done that, we've recently, I think it was early this year or late last year, we had a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant join us for a period of time. They were quite surprised and gave us the feedback at the time that we're probably the smallest organization that ever worked with. And they were really impressed and quite happy that we were kind of wanting to put in DEI steps throughout our recruitment process, but across our organization when we were much, much smaller than most people, so that we can really build and integrate all of their feedback and all of their steps as early in our growth as we possibly can, so that it's not adding on diversity after the event, but rather it's actually building our team with that as kind of a core reference point. So I'm really proud of what the ops team do to try to make things as diverse as we can at the recruitment side, but also the inclusion side, just making sure that our team, as we grow, the more diverse we are, the more important it is that people feel that they still belong and still feel included in a very diverse team. So yeah, that's kind of crucial. So we focus on that a lot at retreats as well, and just finding opportunities for people to share, to learn together, and to really value each other as individuals. So again, we're very intentional about that as much as we possibly can be. Okay, I think we might have time for just one or two more questions. So if you do have anything else to add, I'll just repaste in the chat the link just to feed anything through. Okay, so one question, this is going back to language. Would you consider a candidate who lives in Germany but is not yet fluent in German? So how crucial is the German language?
Okay. So I think that really comes down to how proficient you are in German. So it will be necessary for like this role does need to be able to converse and write well in German. So I think if you feel like you like meet that benchmark, then do go ahead and apply. We will assess the German language. We will assess your German language through the recruitment process to make sure that yeah we're ultimately recruiting someone who has like the necessary level. I don't think it's essential that you're a native speaker. So I think, yeah, it would depend on your level of proficiency at this point.
Cool. But
Do
you
you
would
have anything to add there, Alex?
No, I don't think so. We would expect people to be engaging with donors in German for the most part.
Yeah,
Like that would be pretty much an expectation. So if you're able to do that, and we can assess that through the process, again, doesn't need to be native first language German. Okay, someone has asked, will you consider candidates based in other EU countries? Again, yes, potentially, but there is going to necessarily be a good deal of donor meetings in the DACH region. So the other countries where we do have the ability to employ people would include Belgium, France, the Netherlands, and Spain. But we would have to ask some questions about like how you would be still engaging in meetings for if you were based significantly far from the DACH region. So of course, there's some places in that list which are very close to the DACH region and almost closer to the DACH region than other bits of the DACH region. So, yeah, we'd be able to be flexible on that point, I think. Cool. And the last question, I think, Natasha. So, what is your favorite thing about working at GFI Europe?
yes, I like this question. I can definitely answer this. So yeah, I think my favorite thing is the fact that when I sit down at my laptop every morning, that I know I'm part of something that's truly making a difference or that's truly impactful. So for me, that means knowing that in a decade from now, when my children ask me or someone from the next generation asks me, what did I do when I knew the world was at a crisis point for climate and for nature? I can say that I put my skills to good use, and that I was using my work hours productively to help further a solution. So that feels really, really good to me. And it is also a really exciting solution. So yeah, alternative proteins truly have the potential to make things better for us in the same way that we are now seeing happening with renewable energy, for example. So if we succeed, and by we I mean anyone involved in alternative proteins in the sector, and GFI as an organisation, and our donors who make that work possible, who we work with in the dev team, if we all succeed together, then we get to say in a decade from now, or whatever point in time, we reduced carbon emissions by 20%, or we helped farmers switch to nature-friendly farming. So yeah, that's really, really cool. That's kind of like, yeah, a big reason. And the other reason is that I really just genuinely think that none of that matters if you don't like who you work with, right? Like, your job can be amazing, but you won't be happy if you don't work with nice people. So that almost comes first. Yeah, like everyone who works at GFI is just, without exception, part of this incredibly warm and welcoming culture, which we described earlier. They're very talented and driven people, but also very kind and warm. So yeah, it makes it easy to love working in this organization.
That's really lovely. I was going to answer this as well, but you got my same two things. So,
Sorry.
from my side, yeah, absolutely. The ability to work with people in Europe, but also around the world, who are just world class at what they do, consistently blows my mind. So knowing that you've kind of waking up in the morning, looking at your calendar and just looking forward to the meetings that you've got, because you just get to engage with the most incredible people, that's kind of lovely. That's
Yeah.
gold standard kind of working environment for me. And the second thing is, as Natasha said, it's the impact that we have. So if we do our jobs well, we're literally we're preventing suffering for millions to billions to potentially trillions, if you include shellfish and others, of animal lives every single year. If we are able to basically halt the climate crisis because of work that we can do to steer the world towards a better, more sustainable food system, I mean, that's a unique place to work, and to be able to use our skills to basically accelerate that and make that happen as soon as we can. That's a pretty phenomenal place to work. So yeah, I feel very driven and very motivated to throw myself into an organization at GFI for those really two reasons: the impact, the mission that we have, but also just working with the most incredible people to make it happen. So yeah. I think that's all we've got time for today, but a huge thank you to everybody for joining. If you do have any questions, then feel free to email us. I'll paste in the chat a little bit of information so that you've got the links for this. So the application link is there in the chat. The information is bilingual in English and German on that website. And we also have a website there, europe-hiring@gfi.org. If you have any other questions, anything at all, feel free to let us know. If we didn't have time to answer your question today, apologies for that, but do send it through to that email address and we can always answer in slower time on email. So big thank you to everybody. Massive good luck with your applications. Really looking forward to hearing from you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Alex.
Many thanks, everyone. Take care.